Hi, I'm Bill McLaughlin, Editor-in-Chief for Furniture Today. I'm here talking consumer finance with Bob Johns, Vice President of Sales for Progressive Leasing. Bob, retailers have a lot of questions today about this category, the virtual lease to own. There's so many issues to do it right. What are the things that you're trying to help retailers do these days to overcome some of that?
You know, one of the things that's very important for retailers in this space is to make sure they understand the difference between a credit transaction and a lease transaction. And it's important that when we're talking to consumers, we want to make sure that customer comprehension is of utmost importance. And so using the right language, delineating a lease from a loan, things like that are very, very important in this space.
Can you give me some examples of some of the language that you see commonly in the marketplace that actually serves to confuse rather than educate?
Sure, oftentimes we'll hear retailers use the phrase no credit check or 90 days same as cash. Things like that in our space really don't apply anymore. Most of the virtual rent-to-own providers in our space are doing things where they're doing a credit check. We have retailers sometimes that will use things like 90 days same as cash, and that quite honestly misrepresents the program to the consumer, where at the end of the day they're going to be paying the cost of the item plus an initial payment and taxes. And so it's important that we help the consumer understand what they're buying and what they're getting into.
We live in an age of social media where if the consumer is not happy, if they don't understand, they're going to take that right to the place. So the retailer is really putting their reputation at risk.
Absolutely. Reputational risk for retailers, very, very, very important for them to understand that if they're getting themselves involved with a company who's not doing things the right way, they could find themselves in a bad press situation publicly.
What are some of the things that you advise retailers to make sure that they're doing it in the appropriate way?
First and foremost, even before we ever start a program with the retailer, we want to make sure that the RSAs and the office staff and the store management's trained and understand the language, what the offer is, what the buyout options are for the consumer, so that when it's sold to the consumer, it's represented in the right way.
Now, there's a distinct difference between tertiary lease to own and primary and secondary finance, correct?
Correct. With a credit offer and a primary or secondary offer, the customer's borrowing money at interest. Usually it's a deferred interest program for, it could go 12 months up to 96 months nowadays. But with a lease, it's a lease multiple. So the customer's actually going to lease the product from, in our case, Progressive. So we would buy the product from the retailer and then turn around and lease it to the consumer for a price. And then after they get through completing their payments, they would then own the product. At any time, a consumer actually, if they don't want the product anymore, they can call the company and say, I want to stop making payments, come pick up the product. Whereas in a primary or secondary credit offer, if you buy the product, you own the product, and you owe the company that you borrowed money from.
And then I would presume at that point, if you choose not to pay for it, you're putting your credit at risk.
Absolutely. We've talked with the bureaus. We've talked about, are we actually building credit? Is a 90-day buyout a good outcome for a consumer? Or is an early buyout at 3 months or 5 months or 6 months a good outcome for the consumer? We haven't been able to get a definitive answer from the bureaus, and so in Progressive's case, we've chosen not to represent that we have any type of a program that could potentially build credit. Whereas in the industry, there's actually a provider who's no longer in business that used to advertise all over the place, we build your credit. Interestingly, in California, where they used to pepper signs all over stores, big letters, we build your credit, in 6-point font down the bottom it said, not available in California and Arizona. That's not the type of thing we want in our industry. We want to make sure that we're doing the right thing, period.
Well, thanks for taking the time to explain some of that. It's kind of complex stuff.
It is complex, but once you are trained and understand it, it's actually very easy. And we're proud that the consumer very much loves what we're offering to them. They tell us it's a very fair purchase option. And when you look at it in the country, roughly a third of the United States has subprime credit. And if they didn't have a solution like this, they wouldn't be able to acquire the goods and services they need.
Thanks for taking the time.
My pleasure.